2. First thing in the morning, Rodin sent the images from his screen. A reply arrived within minutes. It named a cafe, and told Rodin to arrive no later than midday. Last time he had been given a residential address, and had met the old man in what Rodin assumed were his own rooms. Nothing ostentatious, but comfortable enough, especially as Rodin quickly reached the conclusion that the old man had lived on his own for some time now. Some later research showed this to be the case. His last partner had died about 6 years ago. He didn't seem to get out much, and kept himself to himself. He didn't appear to work, but still had an income from somewhere. Further research brought up a number of jobs, all paying well, and little in the way of extravagant spending. The old man had a great deal of money stashed away. He had explained the contract in stark terms, barely more than a name and address and what he wanted done to the target. He gave no reason, and Rodin asked for none. That was unimportant. The reward was low. Understandable with the ease of the job, but Rodin still had standards and he pushed the old man up. More for appearance's sake than anything else. If word got around that Rodin was taking jobs for such a pittance, his reputation would suffer. Rumors would start he was desperate or that he was losing his skills. The rumors would invite interest from those who held a grudge. Associates of previous targets, or other mercenaries who wanted more business for themselves. So Rodin had negotiated a higher fee, and after some haggling the old man had named a figure Rodin felt he could live with. The contract had been arranged and completed. Now it was time to collect his reward. He could not imagine the old man at a cafe, so Rodin expected to meet an intermediary of some kind. The place was busy, and a low-level sea of voices washed over Rodin as the door swung shut behind him. Groups were talking amongst themselves, and while no particular voices stood out, it would have been easy to eavesdrop on conversations. Rodin preferred to conduct business in less public places. He was tempted to walk but forced himself to stay. Let's see what happened. He assessed his surroundings. The lighting was low, and the walls looked faded. Whatever color they had been originally, they were now a nondescript gray. The tables and chairs didn't match, and from the sound it was clear that many of the legs needed attention. Underfoot, Rodin felt a tackiness to the tiles and could see many that were cracked. Eyes turned to Rodin. No open stares but fleeting glances, peripheral vision stuff. Nothing Rodin was unused to. Nothing he didn't expect. He was a stranger in a sea of locals. A tall man wearing an apron approached. The apron was stained, just enough to give the appearance that the wearer worked behind the scenes as well as out front. His hands were immaculate, with the nails trimmed and scrubbed. Rodin knew there was no way this man had been working in the kitchen today. He wore the smile of someone who saw others as potential profit, and bowed slightly as he welcomed Rodin to his cafe. The bow was in place of shaking hands. The man didn't want to dirty himself. Rodin nodded his head in return. Behind the cafe owner, Rodin noticed movement. A man who had been sitting at a table on his own was rising, leaving behind a glass still half full of something warm and frothy. The man was short and stocky, and he moved with confidence. Rodin knew his type. He would not let his size allow others to push him around. He was the type to use preemptive violence. As the stocky man made his way across the room, the cafe owner turned and his manner relaxed. There was a history between the two of them. The stocky man was watching Rodin the whole time, and his face remained neutral. As he approached, Rodin was aware of how blue his eyes were. Some blue eyes looked friendly and inviting, but these were cold like a sharp blade. He held out a hand as he closed in, and Rodin instinctively reached for it. Right-handed, Rodin thought. The man's grip was firm, and Rodin felt his own hand being twisted, palm slightly up. The man showing superiority in his handshake. Rodin let him accept this illusion.
Midday. Right on time. I like a man who is punctual.
His voice was confident if a little forced.
Ah, this is the man you were waiting for,
said the cafe owner, fawning over the stocky man.
Do you require another seat at your table?
There was a fleeting annoyance in the stocky man's manner as he spoke.
No. I have business with this man. My usual room.
The cafe owner bowed again, muttering,
But of course.
and waved his arm to one side, indicating a door towards the back of the room. The stocky man's eyes rolled as he motioned for Rodin to follow. Through the door was a flight of stairs and a corridor, the walls a pale blue, possibly the original color of the cafe itself. More doors led off, and Rodin guessed they were fairly solid. Whatever happened behind them, it would be awkward for someone to eavesdrop without bugs. The cafe owner led the way to the far room, opening the door to allow Rodin and the man through. He inquired if the men would like refreshments, all his attention on the stocky man, who answered that he would like his usual, before turning to Rodin with one eyebrow raised. Water will be fine. This was business after all. The cafe owner left, and Rodin looked around the room. It was fairly small, with 3 easy chairs around a low table and a couple of stools by a waist-high shelf. There was no window, just a large screen on one wall currently blank. Light filtered through the ceiling tiles, bouncing off the smooth faux wood flooring. Clean but functional. For business purposes, far better than the cafe itself. The stocky man sat in an easy chair, indicating that Rodin was to do likewise. Only when they both allowed their bodies to recline did he talk.
I saw the images. Good work. Although the gag in the man's mouth was unfortunate. I believe my father would have preferred the man to taste his own flesh.
The gag was to prevent him talking. If I had removed that, he would have spat anything else out.
Even with a blade hovering over him?
He would have known what was coming. The man seemed to consider for a while, before nodding.
True. Even without that act, you fulfilled the contract. This is for you.
He reached into his jacket, pulling out an envelope. There was a name on the front, that of the fat man. He handed the envelope to Rodin, who made it disappear into his own jacket.
You are not going to check the amount is correct?
If it isn't, I know where to find you and the old man. He had never seen this man before, but he was a regular at the cafe, and tracking him down would not be hard. It was still fairly common to receive cash payment, although for the fees Rodin usually commanded, bank transfers were safer, and those who often paid for his services preferred dealing with money in a less physical sense. But this had been a lower-paid job. He had expected cash. There was a muffled knock at the door. The man yelled out, and the door was opened. The owner appeared, carrying a tray which he placed on the low table.
Here are your drinks. Would you care for anything else?
He rubbed his hands together as he straightened, all the while looking at the stocky man. The cold blue eyes fell on Rodin, and the expression seemed to say, "Can you believe this man?" This was business, between the two of them, and a lowly cafe worker was trying to make himself look important.
Just the drinks will be fine.
The owner nodded and left. The stocky man waited until the door was shut before moving. He added sugar to his glass, something frothy and milky like the half-finished drink downstairs. After stirring, he placed the spoon down deliberately and eased back once more.
I should introduce myself. I am Malice. Last time you met my father. He was keen to meet you in person at least once, but he is becoming frail in his old age, and it makes more sense for you to deal with myself now. I will work as an intermediary between yourself and my father.
Rodin waited, knowing Malice wanted to continue talking. He listened, but started paying close attention to what the man was not saying. Already, alarm bells were ringing. It was possibly an overreaction, but Rodin had learnt long ago to trust his initial feelings. There was something else going on here.
My father is satisfied with the manner in which you dealt with the first contract, and would like to offer you another one. This will be slightly more involved, although from what I understand of your past, you should have no difficulties in fulfilling it.
The first contract was little more than a training exercise for me. Before too long, I will be looking for a contract that gives me a challenge. Malice nodded.
I understand. The word is that you are in something of a holiday period. Something about a major contract that pushed you almost to your limits. I appreciate you taking on these lesser contracts for my father while you rest.
Rodin kept his expression blank, thinking of the major contract, wondering how much Malice had heard. Even though Rodin had talked to nobody, He knew how rumors grew. If others knew the truth, Rodin knew his standing would vastly improve. He had gone undercover in the dome, that supposed perfect society under the glass. He had passed himself off as one of their own, working his way to get close to a high-ranking counselor. And he had removed the man. That was where things got tricky. There were ideal opportunities to kill Leopold, but Rodin found the man's words intriguing. He held back. The dome was supposedly sealed. Those inside lived a life of luxury, while those out here in the districts made do however they could. Inside there was no aggression, no need to kill for money, no need to fight. Inside, the greatest technological advances were commonplace. Inside, people would change their bodies almost on a whim, growing muscles and keeping signs of aging at bay with drugs and surgery. In the districts, people struggled to get what they felt they deserved, and the only surgery was to repair wounds. Even that was a risk, with many Meditech facilities working with old technology the dome had discarded. And Leopold had talked of bridging this gulf between the two places. He had shown Rodin how someone from the districts could function in the relaxed yet rule-bound dome. He had talked of the potential for change. He talked of how the dome was stagnating, and had been ever since its inception half a millennium ago. He described how struggle was important to development, and how the best ideas came out of potentially bad situations. The man was only a danger to those who wanted things to remain as they were. Rodin saw no reason why he should be killed. Rodin never failed in a contract and didn't intend to start. He searched for a solution. And he found one within the words of the contract. A phrase that had been repeated often, as the ultimate aim. Leopold needed to be removed. A common euphemism, and in a place such as the dome where violence against another was anathema, using blunter language would have been admitting too much. So the phrase was repeated. Remove Leopold. And that is what Rodin did. He arranged for the counselor to leave the dome. Leopold was still alive, being looked after by Jenna. But Rodin had fulfilled the contract. Leopold had been removed from the dome. They had to pay. And they paid well. Rodin could retire. He could give away most of his money, and still have enough to see him through. He never needed to work again. At least not for financial reasons. But the dreams had started in the dome, and had continued once he was back in the districts. Nightmares in which he was running or fighting for his life. Images and impressions of suffering, burning and pain. The only way to silence them had been to bring up what he had seen in his own life. The imagined pain in the nightmares could only be pushed back with the real pain he had seen in others. Like the fat man. Rodin needed to work in order to sleep at night. He reached for his water, taking a sip. He kept his eyes on Malice, and when he placed the glass back down he asked, "And this next contract?" Malice reached into his jacket once more, removing a single sheet of paper.
I don't imagine it will be the challenge you are after, but it might be a more involved training exercise than the last one.
He handed the paper over. Rodin took it but did not look down. He waited for Malice.
A couple. Names are on the sheet. They are fairly good folk, but they have a secret. That is why my father wants them removed, and that is how you can get at them. He wants this contract fulfilled with haste, and I believe the follow-up contract will be something that you can really get your teeth into.
Any special instructions?
Like last time, there is a script, and certain actions my father would like to be performed. Again, proof will be required for full payment. All the details are on the paper. Questions?
Now was not the time, not for the questions that Rodin wanted to ask. I'll be in contact if there are. Malice nodded, then rose.
Please stay and finish your drink. I have other matters to attend to.
He held out his hand.
I expect to hear from you soon.
Rodin shook the man's hand once more without rising from his chair. There was a smile on Malice's face, but it was not genuine. The man was hiding something. As the man left the room, Rodin eased himself back, took up his coffee and started to read the paper.